Hello, welcome to the program Spiritism Inspiring Lives. Today our reflections will be based on the theme Relative Happiness and Unhappiness. It's interesting to start by reflecting why relative happiness or unhappiness, and what do we understand in this stage of our evolution happiness means for us. From which perspective are we analyzing? So here in these couple of minutes I'm aware there is a short time available, we will be reflecting about what Spiritism teaches us about relative happiness and unhappiness. Spiritism helps us through the philosophical aspect which we find in the Spirits book by Allan Kardec. This book is free of charge, available in the internet for those who may be willing to go deeper into, considering that our time is very short here. But we are all immortal beings. We address the philosophical aspect of Spiritism, helping us to enlighten our hearts and minds by understanding our existences, the happiness or unhappiness, within a broader perspective, considering the theory of reincarnation and also the immortality of the soul, where we always are inheriting our own tendencies and promoting them as we go through the evolution path through different existences. Today we start within the Spirits book, question 920, where Allan Kardec asks the Enlightened Spirits, which are teaching us and we are learning. The Enlightened Spirits are our friends, are dear to us, helping us, pointing different ways how to address our experiences which are transitory. So question 920, and I quote, "Can people enjoy complete happiness while on earth?" That is a very relevant question because we, people, are immortal spirits. We are on earth learning in the school earth. And the answers given for us to reflect is no, because life has been given to them as either a trial or an expiation. It is up to them to mitigate their misfortunes and be as happy as possible while on earth. So again, if we are aiming complete happiness on earth, that is not possible. And that is not a reason for us to get depressed or us to get looking down in life. It is helping us to think about in a broader perspective. We are immortal beings. Earth is still a planet of trials and expiations. Therefore, we all are under those experiences. It's not punishment. It's not imposition. It is a way of learning to promote ourselves to conquer real happiness. So in this stage of evolution where we find ourselves, we cannot be completely happy yet. But it's up to us as unique beings in the universe as we are, in this unique existence where we are transiting now, is up to us as learners of ourselves to address eventual unhappy reasons that we bring within our consciousness, finding the causes, which always goes back to our shortcomings or negativity or imperfections, and freely, lovingly choosing to address them so that we can heal ourselves from those limitations that we bring ourselves. And that for itself is a way that we are gradually promoting real happiness within ourselves. Moving forward, still in the Spirits book by Allan Kardec, question 921, and I quote, "We can understand that people will be happy on earth when humanity as a whole is finally transformed. But meanwhile, is it possible for anyone to enjoy relative happiness? It seems that it takes a long time if we look around ourselves today, how earth is, meaning how we as humanity is still very in a shadow way of what we are disturbing and creating unhappy experiences. But the question is very important. Among all of that, we cannot wait for money to change and everyone to change. Is that then a reason that we can individually be happy? Is there a way that we can enjoy relative happiness? and the Enlightened Spirits say to us, most of the time, people are the artisans of their own unhappiness. If they would practice the law of God, they would spare themselves many misfortunes and enjoy a state of happiness that is as great as their existence on such a dense plane will allow. So again, bear in mind, we are reflecting relative happiness and unhappiness. Relative happiness is possible when we choose to take the responsibility of our own inner growth, of our own inner healing, of our own inner transformation, observing the causes of our unhappiness, which are within, and therefore we have the inner freedom given by God in order to promote us. And usually that starts observing our own thoughts, our own belief systems, and also addressing our primitive, negative emotions that we may have. When we learn here, if we would practice the law of God, then we would have the possibility to have relative happiness on earth. Why do I say relative happiness if I choose to practice the law of God? Because we still are in a planet Earth, planet of trials and expiations, and therefore we all have challenges to undergo. It's not a punishment, it is a tool for us to expand our inner wisdom, to educate our negative thoughts and belief system, promoting new ones according to the natural law, which is God's law, which is the law of love. So each time when we think, we feel, and we act in discordance of the law of love, we may feel the negativity within or the unhappiness. We are all under the law of cause and effect. Relative happiness or unhappiness has to do how we have interacted with the law of cause and effect in the past, in this existence or in other existences. And also relative happiness has to do how we are choosing in the present or even in the past, how we stimulated our free will. If we freely choose to understand, that is to study first, to accept, and then to behave according to the law of God, which is the law of love. And the law of love is a universal law which is good for everyone. We are promoting ourselves out of the excessive selfishness and pride, which are the causes of the unhappiness that we may have experienced in using our free will. We all are in the school earth in order to promote ourselves. So I repeat again, God's laws are the natural laws in the universe, and they summarize the law of love, which guides us all, promotes us all in our evolutionary journey. So we are more unhappy when we are in discord of the natural law or the law of love. Therefore, meaning that our initiatives, our free will, our thoughts and actions, they are based on the lack of self-love. And once we understand that, then we stand up for ourselves, taking the responsibility, which is the internal autonomy, and we choose now to behave in our mental, emotional, and behavioral level according to the natural laws, and therefore developing self-love. Self-love means respecting ourselves, but not stagnating in our shadows, overcoming them, healing ourselves from. Self-love means when we may put efforts into our daily existences to promote ourselves to be better today than we were yesterday, and better according to God's laws, according to the universal law, according to the law of love. Because the universal law of God is good for everyone, everywhere, all the time. That is fundamental. There is no privilege for one soul or another. That doesn't exist in us. And if you move forward here in the question 921, part of the note, because the note is quite big, but here we stay only with part of it. We learn, I quote, if we were to trace what we call our earthly misfortunes back to their origin, we would see that most of them are the result of an earthly deviation from the straight and through pathway, thereby entering onto the wrong path. And from one thing to the next, we finally fell into disgrace. again, is so important if we develop the ability to reflect within ourselves, to analyze our thoughts, to analyze. It's almost like giving ourselves, allowing ourselves to have the time to look within us and sincerely and honestly to listen. What are the causes of what I'm feeling? What are the causes of my thoughts within myself? Always within, so that we go, that we meet the limitations, the shortcomings that we bring with the eyes of self-love, without blaming, without criticizing ourselves, but surely standing up and changing. Especially when we realize that we may have thoughts that we are blaming others for how we are feeling, blaming others for our unhappiness. We need to stop. Because really, truly, from a transpersonal psychological perspective, as immortal beings as we are, other people do not have the power over us once we connect with the self, with the real power within, which is the divine love that we bring within ourselves. So people, yes, can behave in a negative way towards us, but how we read it, how we feel in relation to that, that is where we are, and we can change that. So let's always invest in that ability. Realizing our shortcomings is actually developing our inner wisdom, so that we stop blaming others and we free ourselves out of an unconscious pattern sometimes of guilt, of low self-esteem, of inferior complex, although we may be unconscious. But when we have negative tendencies, or when we are constantly slandering about people, gossiping around people, we are unhappy souls. We are dealing with our causes of unhappiness that perhaps we may not yet be conscious of. Once we realize in our inner journey that we are evolving, we become aware that actually these tendencies, this negative tendency of gossiping and slandering about, is increasing my own unhappiness and is delaying my real happiness. So it's wise to consider these possibilities, because really it comes down to us as unique beings in the universe, that we have the free will, which is the greatest tool that God, the creator of all of us, gave to us for us to choose and help us to promote towards the real goodness, the real happiness. Real happiness does not mean that we are not facing challenges. We are, because we are learners of ourselves in daily basis. But we can always place ourselves out of the victim position and in the position as a learner. Was it challenging? What is it about? That the universe is trying to promote me, as long as I take the responsibility and I look within, observing what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. Bear in mind, as we started our reflections here today, everything that is contrary or against God's law, that is the law of love, which is universal, that causes unhappiness within ourselves. Everything that we choose to think, to feel, to say, to behave according to the universal law, which is God's law, therefore the law of love, the universal law of love, will favor real happiness, although it's relative, because our understanding about ourselves, about our experiences, which are transitory, will change according to expanding our own understanding. Victimization requires attention, so that we learn new ways of being that are healthier, that are wiser, that are more loving, that promote relative happiness in our existences. And if we move on, still in the Spirit's Book, question 922, I quote, when we learn, earthly happiness is relative to the position of each person, and what might be enough for the happiness of one would be misfortune for another. Is there nevertheless a common standard of happiness to all? And we learn, for material existence, it is the possession of all that is necessary. For the moral life, it is a good conscience and faith in the future. Relative happiness and unhappiness. Here we learn that for material existence is the possession of necessary. The question is, what is necessary for each one of us? Considering that we are unique, evolved in a unique way, in terms of our intellectual and moral or emotional intelligence, then if you would place 10 people in a room and would raise this question, what is necessary for you? We would have, for sure, 10 different answers. And they would all represent our unique way of understanding at this stage what happiness would mean according what my material necessities would be. The reality is, as more as we develop real happiness through detaching ourselves in a to interact with the material things in a more wiser way, we will need less. As more as we promote spiritually, as more as we grow spiritually, we have new ways of being. We will simplify our material necessities. That is a natural factor that will happen throughout the different existences. So everyone can ask right now, what is relevant to me from a material perspective of my existence? What brings happiness or unhappiness? Bear in mind our initial reflection. Everything what is down to my choices, which I'm free to have, but if it's against God's law, the universal laws, sooner or later in this existence or in another, I will be invited to address and to change my habits, my ways of being. Simplifying means becoming wiser and becoming lighter. Life is simpler and bringing more fulfillment within our beings. For the moral life is a good conscience and faith in the future, relative happiness and unhappiness. Do you understand that the moral life is relevant for relative happiness? And what do I understand about moral life? From which dimension? From which perspective? Here, as we are studying within the laws of reincarnation, the theory of reincarnation, the immortality of the soul, and God's laws, surely we are talking about the universal code of morality, of ethics. Again, what is right for one is right for another, either on earth or beyond. So it's fundamental to observe when we talk about the moral life, as more we journey within, we will become aware that we are invited to reflect on our emotional intelligence. How far have we allowed ourselves to develop our emotional intelligence? Pride, selfishness, excessive vanity, indifference, hate, vengeance. We are talking about our emotional intelligence, but in a very primitive way. And a conscious faith in the future. What is future for us? When we consider relative happiness and unhappiness. Future, do I think the next minute, the next day, the next month, or I am already in a place which I promoted myself to understand that the future also means the next existences. So if I'm very unhappy now, I'm on earth in order to heal myself. Let's face it, if you cannot do it alone, let's ask for help. There are plenty of professionals on earth that can help us. And another way also to heal ourselves, to understand us better, is developing our spirituality. Sometimes we are quite blocked in the essence of our existences, which is the spiritual element. And then the relative happiness can cause great unhappiness later on once we wake up gradually. So future is always full of good experiences and happiness as more as we evolve, but not from a perspective as a child. As an adult human being who understand there are a lot of new experiences that we need to learn, either through our intellectual intelligence, through our emotional intelligence, through the daily experiences that the universe presents to us. Always bear in mind that our choices based on the use and train and practice of our free will may be better and better, that we always consider the consequences of our initiatives, because all of us are under and within the law of cause and effect. So try not to harm others so that we are not harming ourselves, because harming others is harming ourselves. And that is favoring unhappiness that may emerge in our consciousness sooner or later. And as we carry on in the book now, A Presença Amorosa de Deus em Nossas Vidas, by Alírio de Cerqueira Filho, he helps us even to go a bit more deeper, and I quote, "The greatest obstacle created by the human being, which distances himself from God, is the doubt generated by materialism produced by exacerbated pride. Becoming arrogant, believing to know everything, man deludes himself and believes that life, with all that exists in the universe, can be explained with materialistic theory. Here we respect all the different theories that are present on Earth, understanding they are all theories in evolution. If you look back 100 years ago or 500 years ago, surely we had different theories, and we can clearly see that they have been evolving, which is part of the law of evolution as presented by Darwin. Everything is evolving, yet the materialistic theories do not consider the spiritual element. They are based on the body, they are based only in this existence, and they are also rooted in pride and selfishness. So let's get the maximum of pleasure, and I don't care about anyone. Let me destroy other people's lives, let me hate others, and I'm aiming to be happy. That is not possible under God's laws. Sooner or later, we will be invited to reflect about the causes of our unhappiness. But on the other way, if we respect all the materialistic theories, including ourselves in this divine project of evolution, and we can reasonably understand why they existed in the past and still are here through the lenses of the law of progress, then we also take their responsibility, which is autonomy, to go and study more, because these days of technology, all the knowledge is available for everyone who is willing to study. And then we enlighten our minds and we see that all the materialistic theories that will evolve towards the natural laws, God's laws, which are the laws of God. So in that way, we are gradually learning, choosing freely, is stimulating our belief systems, learning to reason for ourselves according to the law of love, behaving more in daily tests and experiences that we make sure that we are aware not to harm others, therefore we are not harming ourselves. We are re-editing our own consciousness, and in that way we are promoting relative happiness in this existence and also in the future existences. Moving forward in the Spirit's book, question 924, I quote, "There are misfortunes which do not depend on the way we act and which harm the most righteous people. Isn't there a way to keep ourselves from such misfortunes? If you want to progress, you must resign yourselves and endure misfortunes without complaining. However, you will always find consolation within your own conscience, which gives you the hope of a better future, provided you do what is needed to obtain it. Relative happiness or unhappiness." So again, yes, there are experiences in our existences which we don't have control of. We can choose to go through them in a resigned way, because resignation is one of the greatest values of our superconsciousness. It is not part of not having our own identity. It is part of our higher identity. When we resign ourselves, when we don't fight against what the universe is presented to us, when we don't fight against the misfortunes that perhaps may be presented to us, through understanding that the cause of the misfortunes are to promote us in our healing, in our consciousness, then we resign, we don't fight, because when we fight, we don't accept, or we are rebellious, or we don't want to, then it becomes reason for unhappiness within ourselves. But when we understand and let it go, which requires letting go the ego's tendencies and stimulated the higher self, In that way, we then can end any aspect of complaining or demanding from others that they sort out our lives. We respect everyone in the universe through self-respect also. We may not agree with everything, but we don't have the need to gossip, slander, and criticize other people. We let other people to be where they are. We choose to promote ourselves further. We accept certain experiences which we do not have control, and always with the eyes as a learner. And in that way is also possible to conquer the relative happiness, because we choose to develop humbleness, we choose to develop goodness within, we choose to develop the resignation, we choose to develop our inner wisdom, actually. And that is a proposal of self-love. Each time when we relate with us in relation to others through the proposal of self-love, we are promoting relative happiness. As we learn further here in the question 931 in the Spirits book, and I quote, why are the suffering social classes more numerous than the fortunate ones? No one is perfectly happy. Those who are looked as a fortunate one often hide poignant afflictions. Suffering is everywhere. However, in response to your thought, I will say that what you call the suffering classes are more numerous because Earth is a place of expiation. When humans have finally transformed it into the habitat of goodness and of good spirits, men and women will no longer be unhappy in this world. It will be a terrestrial paradise for them. We would agree that the classes of people who are suffering from different sorts of limitations is big. Yes, it is. But here we learn also through the natural laws in the universe that not necessarily for those who have wealth or those who may have everything what the material perspective allows us to have are happy. We have clear evidence of that. There are plenty of people who is nothing missing from the materialistic perspective, and yet they are depressed. They sometimes consider suicide. They sometimes are very ill, psychologically, emotionally. So that represents the reality that materialistic wealth not necessarily causes happiness. What causes real happiness is when we transform ourselves, when we become more humble, when we become less offensive, when we choose to be good, when we choose to think in a fraternal way towards every being within our family, within corporeal family, within our workplace, where surely we find we have differences and sometimes challenging moments to express ourselves. We are invited, yes, to cooperate for our own achievements in developing real happiness and also for the others. So although there are moments that we may disagree with each other, but we are not in this negative, toxic inner self. We are already healing that part in a wiser way and freeing ourselves from that negativity or from that immaturity that we may think that all happiness comes from other people or external situations, which is not true when we analyze relative happiness or unhappiness from a transpersonal, holistic perspective. That only depends on us. As the benefactor Joanna de Angelis in the book Life, Challenges and Solution teaches us, I quote, real happiness is independent of what one has, but it is the result of what one is. That is fundamental to consider. Because otherwise people who don't have much money, they would be really miserable. And we have the evidence that a lot of people sometimes who don't have much money, they can give us great lessons of happiness because they are more detached of what is transitory. So in order to consider to develop the relative happiness which is possible on earth, we need to focus more within and address our own limitations or our shortcomings or the causes of our unhappiness. Once we become aware and we transform them, because we have the free will, we can learn to think in a wiser way, to become more fraternal, to become more forgiving, to become more tolerant, to become more benevolent, to let go process instead of holding on crutches and hate and vengeance. That are causes of unhappiness. So in that way, as Joanna de Angelis leaves the reflections that real happiness has to do who we are. So let's expand our self-awareness and also in a loving way address our own causes of unhappiness, which we create, and we can change that. And in relation to the external world, which involves people and situations, let's develop the wisdom to know that we sometimes and quite often don't have control of that. Letting go. Letting go does not mean to be indifferent. It means to develop our inner wisdom, to recognize what is down to you, what is down to us to change for better. Therefore, promoting real happiness according to the universal laws, and in relation to other people or situations when we cannot do, okay, we cannot change, let go, meaning accepting. Accepting is training self-love. Respecting self and others is training self-love. It is bringing meaning in a deeper level to us. And each time when we are challenging our own unhappy causes within, and we promote those thoughts, belief systems, emotions, educating ourselves, we are working towards conquering real happiness, be in this existence or in other existences. We are all in the pathway of self-healing. So hopefully, as we are coming to the end of our reflections here, I sincerely hope that we can help us to nourish a bit more in order to promote real happiness, letting go our egoistic way of thinking, or personality needs to be changed and healed so that we can improve and live our lives with a more quality way in promoting real happiness, although we go through challenging experiences to stimulate the inner wisdom. So in that way, we're coming to the end. I wish you much peace to all, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.